I grew up in Liberty, Missouri during the 90s, which meant that Nebraska football was the dominant school in that region. A unique aspect of Nebraska is that it was one of the first colleges to truly adopt modern weight training and nutritional practices. So, as early as 13, I began learning Olympic lifting, running technique, and participating in a year-long training program, thanks to my coaches, who, of course, were all Nebraska fanatics. Fast forward to adulthood, and I had the opportunity to coach in the football craze state of Texas for over a decade. We have nice weight rooms, stadiums, and even year-long programs. Still, few schools outside of the largest classifications have designated strength and conditioning coaches. And even then, typically they were only used by the football team, though available for all other sports. It was always a curious imbalance to me. So needless to say, at almost 40 years old, I have had at least 25 years of experience in weightlifting, speed development. I was a successful sprint coach, and conditioning. However, I am nowhere near an expert in any of those fields and should not be in charge of running an organization-wide strength and conditioning program. In my experience, there has always been a massive disconnect in football strength and conditioning at the lower levels and even at Summit College between what actually works and how an organization's comprehensive program should be implemented. Today, we will discuss this topic as well as others with Terrence, Kennel, the Director of Football Applied Science and Speed Development at USF Football. TK, let's dive right into it. At a 30,000-foot view, what does football conditioning look like? Because to me, that is where the biggest misunderstanding lies.
Yeah, for sure. I think to an extent it varies a little bit at the level. So whether it's looking at high school versus like college versus pro level will vary a little bit. Just obviously in high school, you get more kids playing more sports. Hopefully, like ideally, play a lot of sports. Yeah, do track, do baseball, basketball, whatever, wrestling. And so you don't have to necessarily fill that bucket as much with those kids, but you still need to do some level of like low intensity running, tempo runs. I think we're kind of moving past the days now. We're in a field of like 300-yard shuttles, 110 tests, stuff like that, cross fields, gassers. I remember at my high school, I went to in Texas at Rockville Heath, like we used to do like snake runs where you run up and down every single line.
Yes.
You know? So I think we're moving a little bit past that as a field, like hopefully I think at multiple levels. But you never want to go so far one way where it's like sprint only, sprint all the time. It's like, yeah, I mean, like you got to be fast. But like there's a level of genetics that's going to take care of that. And puberty, especially when they're 14 to 18 years old.
Right.
But you also develop a general like fitness-based psyche recover between games, between practices. It helps a bit of like if you go like a deeper level of like stress tolerance and resilience and robustness that you want for players like going long run, because people think sometimes forget like a play may only last 4, 5, 6 seconds. You may get another 50, 60-second rest. I guess unless you're playing us because we snap the ball every like 50 seconds.
Right.
but it's like but man, it's like you have to repeat that across a span of like 3+ hours. Between like if it's college level, you have TV timeouts, media timeouts, halftime. It's like you want to be able to like ramp up when you need to go, but also be able to recover between plays, between drives. Like it's so valuable. I think it's like an undervalued tool, undervalued aspect of like true conditioning. And people think conditioning to make us slow.
Right.
I think like they have like PTSD from when they were in high school.
Running laps.
Like, yeah, it's like man, I gotta do fifths. I gotta like run perimeters. I got 300-yard shuttles. It's like that's what made me slow, beat me up. It's like no, man, there's a smart way we can do it, where it's not always just beating your body down, but you still can sprint the next day and still play fast and be fast and things like that.
Yeah, I think football is one of those two where it's so asymmetric in the way that the game is played. Is so like you can design. I remember one time I was asked like, "Hey, you're going to be in charge of the running," and so I'm like, "Okay." So I have the idea of like, well, I'll make it game specific, right? Like we'll sprint for 4 seconds, right? And then we'll have because we were tempo, so we'll have like 30 seconds in between. But then we'll go on like the way I try to make it asymmetric was like we'll do 6 of them, and then the next time we'll come and do 10 because it's a long drive. But then I think too, like you said, the thing that I think is the most important and is one of the biggest things that's lost is like the timeouts. right? Like, and not just like a technical timeout, the actual like, hey, our offense just went on a 10-minute drive. I've been sitting now idle for basically 15 minutes.
Yeah.
What does that look like coming out? How do I replicate that? What have you found to be useful in that sense when looking at conditioning? Because like I feel like I was like pretty good. Like my idea was good,
Yeah.
but like it's not perfect.
Yeah, I'll say a big one. So I think one big one's like how you structure the week too. So like, big thing we do is like our Mondays, like our low intensity run days. That look like tempo runs. Essentially, it'll be anywhere from a 10 to 15-second run, and then roughly a 30 to 45-second rest. But we'll build the volume out. Like we'll go as far as like doing 24 reps of those.
Yeah.
Before we push to 26 before, just to build that volume and time on feet and that accumulation. And then another day we have in a week is like our repeat sprint ability day, which gets a little bit more. That's where it's close to kind of what you said. Like it's a 5-second sprint, the 5-second like sprint with a cut in it, and then we'll trickle down all the way to 15-second rest, and we'll build that out to 20, 22 reps. That's how we get that exposure of like true low intensity, boring to watch, boring to do, and then like hey, high intensity, repeat those efforts, a little bit limited recovery with a ability to repeat that kind of high intensity quality, and then balancing that kind of workload across the week is also super valuable.
Yeah, and that makes it like to me too is like I think if it's not necessarily that hard to start really as like a high school coach or even just a lower level college coach to think about, okay, well, what does the typical week look like practice wise and then game wise? And then even too, like within a game, what do I want? So yeah, it may like you should be building your strength and conditioning off of kind of replicating what that week would look like, right? Is that basically what you're telling me?
Yeah, pretty much. So you kind of like let the easy stuff be easy, and I get it. Like it's hard to watch because there's like guys maybe like jogging or not sprinting, no one's bent over, like throwing up. But it's like man, like it should be easy because there are some days in the practice where you have walkthroughs, you have low intensity days. Guys have times when like they're not on the field and they're standing on the sidelines. Like that's okay. And then, but like, while your hard days are hard, like let them truly be hard. Like push the envelope, push the tempo, push the pace, and then you have like your sprint work you need to like put in within that as well. So guys get that true exposure to like high intensity efforts, like to help them get faster at the end of the day.
Yeah, because to me, that's like typical football conditioning at the lower level or even just weight. There's such a default to like do military and CrossFit workouts. Like, because everything has to be tough. Like, that's what I call it, like toughness drills, right? And like the science just is not there. Like, even through psychology, like we don't want survivors as, you know what I mean? I don't want the players surviving. I want the players thriving. I want them to understand like there's a purpose to what we're doing. Like, that's why, like, for instance, like mat drills, for tough, like I always thought mat drills were dumb. And I'll die on that molehill if we want to call it that. Like I'll take that one. I'll take that bullet. Like I always thought they were dumb. But then you always hear the argument of like, oh well, yeah, but it builds toughness and it builds like And so to me, like that's where I think I would almost argue that a majority of the high school weight training and conditioning is centered around some sort of like militaristic CrossFit, over distance training, not game specific, mat drills, toughness drills.
Hard for the sake of hard.
Yeah, like, just because I think
miserable be miserable. It's like, man, we don't have to do this to these kids.
And that's what like I always use the rule of like, if I'm bored, like I was a teacher. I taught in the classroom for over a decade. If the lesson was boring to me, I can guarantee the kids were bored. It's a guarantee. So like, I think if you're a coach and you're sitting there and you're looking at these drills, and yeah, we're older, we don't have to work out. Like, for me, I was like I said at the beginning, like since the age of 13, I Olympic lifted. I've been cleaning since the age of 13. When I got done with college football, I was like, you know what? I don't really want to do snatch. Yeah. I don't want to do a jerk. I don't want to be putting 225 pounds over my head and like catching it low.
Yeah. You're like, no, I'm out of that. I'm good.
Right. So I get like coaches saying like, okay, yeah, but like I wouldn't do what the kids are doing. That's great. But like if you're sitting there and you objectively look at it, right, and you're like, are we doing this just because we did it as kids,
Yeah.
right? Or are we doing this because there's a purpose?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
And I think some people think that like, oh, if it's like purposeful training, it won't be as hard. And it's like, no, man. Like, there are days like with, and I'll use example like one of our tempo days when we're running. Like, we have days because of the nature of how we want to play. We have days where we have repeat efforts. So like they'll essentially run. So skill guys will run 90 yards, literally like touch the line, come straight back. Like that's like built into like 22, 24. They maybe have like 3 or 4 of those. But it's just like that is miserable. And
Right.
then, like,
Yes.
and then like we'll add things like we add a weight vest in as you close to the cam. Just add some more similar symbols to have like pads on. But that's like it's like man, it's like it can be purposeful and still be very hard to do. So that's what you really want. So you kind of like aiming towards that side of like, hey, we're getting prepared for like practice, getting prepared for camp, getting prepared for OTAs and games. But also like there is a level like the toughest thing to do is to show up every day.
Yes.
It's easy to make them hard one time and move on.
Right. And I think like I go back to like, cause I have a 7-year-old who plays, basically dad ball, tackle football. And it's like they start every practice with a lap.
Yeah.
And it's like he's miserable. He hates it. It's the word. If you ask, it's so funny because I was talking to another coaching friend of mine. We both have sons on the same team, and we were talking about this literally the other day. It's like middle of the June. It's hot as hell, and you got these little kids running like up the poles or whatever. And you're like, and he was like, I guarantee you, if you ask every kid out there, what's the worst part of practice, they would say it's the lap at the beginning of practice. And so, like, as a teacher, again, if that's your anticipatory set, that's what your opener is. Like, what are you, and then two, not only that, but like some of this over distance training, and you can maybe comment on this because you're obviously the expert, but like some of this over distance training, you're making them tired and then you're asking them to be explosive. Like, so you're doing an over distance and then you're saying, okay, well, let's go right into being explosive and basically getting into practice.
Yeah. And then kids get like, then dudes get fucking, the motherfuckers like, oh, why aren't you playing fast? It's like, well, he's exhausted.
Yeah. Yes.
Just ran into the dirt. So that's why he's not running fast. So I think that's one thing I always give, like Brad, our coaching staff here is that what we have like pretty much meshing kind of what we do and like how we structure our week and things like that. Where we have like, hey, this day, like first day of the week's gonna be kind of a re-entry, like a little more low intensity social teams walk through, lift to kind of get in, get out, watch film. But then practice next true first day of practice is like hard. We want to run fast. So we call it like kind of like 90% day. Like we want guys to hit at least 90% plus top speed, and we try to do it within football as well. It's not like, oh, we're going to line everybody up on the goal line, we're going to sprint 30 yards. It's like, no, I want you to get it actually in routes on air. I want you to get it in one-on-ones. Like we'll play a little press man. We're going to run down full coverage on kickoff or punt. That's how you get it within the context of football. And then like we go a shorter yardage, lower intensity day on the day 2 of practice. And it's a walkthrough, fast Friday, and then play on Saturdays. That's one thing I'll say, like, if your coaches want to, like, they always say, oh, I want guys to play fast, be fast. Like, man, you have to help. Part of that is, like, you have to structure some of your practices around that.
Yes.
Like, you can't be like, oh, I want them to be one of the guys to run fast, but then everything's short yardage. It's like they're not going to have a chance to open up.
Yeah, I think there's like that to me is a big thing too, is like, well, okay, the average play is 4 seconds, right? So then we're just going to sprint for 4 seconds. And like you said, that's not really, if you're only going to work short yardage, then your limit, that's actually less than that, right? Like if you really want your guys to be fast and you have to open up, which that's a great segue into like my next question is like, so how does like a modern strength and conditioning program counter with like this sprint based conditioning movement that we're seeing within the NFL, especially I'm not NFL, but at the lower levels in football of like the feed the cats movement or sprint based movement, where essentially like all we do is time sprints.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a big part is like, that's why I always said we kind of say to the staff, ideally, we kind of want kids to come in like early enroll, even though I get it from my parents and stuff like that. But like, just because then it gives us time to build that chronic workload. Like, and by chronic, it's like, hey, this is the workload you can like tolerate and build up. Because what we have seen, like we've gotten like guys from that kind of system before, and like they really struggle with just the overall work across the week because it's not necessarily intense. It's like, hey, we'll walk through here, routes here, you have this, you have that, like this stuff, and like we has a level of like, hey man, you have to be in shape to like play this sport, and also you're better. The more conditioned you are, the better there is the ability to recover between sprints. You can do more sprinting. Like it's crazy, like crazier concept. Like, hey man, if you're in better shape, instead of doing just 2 reps in a day, like we can get to 5, 6 reps. And like, who's gonna run faster? The guy who's able to do 5 max effort sprints and not fall off the cliff, or the guy who's only able to do 2. And so we kind of take with that approach. Like it becomes like a bit of a teaching thing, like for those guys, and they come in from those systems because they are vastly different. And you guys understand, like, hey man, you have to be in shape not only just for the game, but even tolerate practice day in day out, and tolerate camp. And I was like, yeah, not every day won't be like a kick in the butt, but like there'll be some hard days.
Right.
It's gonna be a 22 period practice. Like you have to be able to maintain a level of quality and intensity throughout that, and be able to come back and have a 16 period practice the next day.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the other thing too. Is like even because I was always a sprints coach everywhere I went. So and then I obviously ran in college, and then high school I was a successful sprinter. So like you understand, like just because I'm 100 or 200 meter dash runner, I still have to have some sort of a base of conditioning.
Yeah.
It can't just always be we're working 10-yard sprints, 20-yard sprints, 40-yard sprints. Well, then, we get into that sense of like you're not, and I think this is what you're saying. It's like you're not really building a base of conditioning.
Yeah.
Because there's other things around that as well, like the lifting aspect, the physical aspect of playing football, the combat aspect of football, which is so much different than track, where everything is essentially perfect conditions, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And go ahead.
They have this like I think it's just like idea of like people want this pendulum to swing the other way because they remember being so miserable when they were like in high school or in college.
Right.
Like, man, doesn't mean you go all the way to the other side of like don't do any conditioning, because now you're setting that kid up for failure in the long run, because like they won't be able to tolerate the running is going to take, the lifting is going to take to be prepared just to get them ready for the game. Let alone make them like a better overall athlete, but it's like you have to be ready for like practice in the games. It's like when you're 17, 18 years old and you come into like a college football setting, like most of the time, there's obviously outliers to everything. Like most times, like, hey, it's going to move faster than you ever experienced. It's going to be longer. It's going to be way more physical than you ever experienced. So you have to be able to combat that and then bounce back and recover, because can't just show up for day 1. So we need you for day 18. Also.
Yes. Yeah. And I think too, like with this, I think the other thing too is like what's really attractive about those programs is also that there's such a desire for speed. I think we see this at the combine every year, just like the over infatuation with the 40. And then now with miles per hour, look, as somebody that has ran a decent 40, like you can game that, and talk to anybody that does these trainings for these combine guys, and you can game a 40. Like obviously, and you mentioned it earlier, genetics is really what is setting the speed for a lot of people. But I think there's such a desire for these. And then you do see it is that, hey, we're just going to focus on speed training. So we may not be big, but we're going to be fast everywhere and everybody's going to be able to run. And I think because I experienced this in college where all we did was Olympic lifting and sprints. And then we would get up against a team that was like equal or better than us, and they were bigger. And then here we are, we're gassed in the fourth quarter because we can't push anybody around.
Yeah,
I might be able to outrun you, but that doesn't matter when the offensive line isn't blocking, or the defensive line can't get off a block because they're completely gassed, because it's the strength element within that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just a deal of like. It's just so like very short-sighted, like thinking it's not, and because it is, like, it's sexy like, oh, we have 9 kids in this high school who run 23 miles an hour,
right?
And then like, we have this many kids who run a sub 1 fly 10. But it's like, okay, so man, it's like that's great, dude. Like, but like, there's a level of like preparedness they have to be ready for. That like you're under preparing them for the actual game itself, and like. that is something that we always try to harp on with guys. It's like, man, we're gonna develop, we're gonna get faster, we're gonna sprint at least twice a week, like pretty much all year round. I was like, but there's a level of like true fitness you just need to tolerate the game, and we're lucky here, like from a resource standpoint, where we have a heart rate monitor. So like I had a little heart rate data from our O line, D line, receivers, and our quarterback of like, man, this is what the game. This is what the game looks like. This is what practice looks like. And
Right.
this is what these different training sessions that we're doing on the field, in the weight room, OTAs, Indy, that are geared towards to kind of prepare you for that stress and be able to recover from it.
Yeah, and that brings me to like, because we kind of hit on it, but like talking about the bigs in particular, like what to you is the least understood position group in terms of conditioning? Because like to me, it's got to be the bigs. Because I think for like I played corner and receiver. And then played corner in college. Like you're running all the time. I get that, right? Like that's easy. But like, what do you do when you're a offensive lineman? Like you can't run. And I think like we see this at the lower levels. This is why I wanted to bring you on here and talk to you about this, because at the lower levels, we're trying to do a one size fits all, right? Like we're just treating everything as like everybody's going to go through everything together, right? That's going to be the team building aspect of it. It's really hard, and the quicker guys are going to pick up the younger guys. But really, at the end of the day, like we're all different. These position groups are being asked. Like I do not want my left tackle to be able to sprint at the same capacity as my corner. Like that.
Yeah,
those are two different things. So am I right in saying that the bigs are really the most misunderstood group?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, one of my kind of good friends, Andy Ryland, he used to work for USA Football, and we just moved like Richard Gray and stuff like that in GSI. He says,
both good friends of mine.
yeah. So he says, he always says, what makes it hard on game day? And it's like, if you ask an offensive line, defensive line, like, man, what's the hardest part of the game? They're like, man, moving up the field is easy. It is fighting another 300-pound man who's trying to take my head off, like in a 3-yard space.
Right.
And so I think people get this idea of, oh yeah, like you said, make them run a ton. And it's like, man, really, like there's some level of running they should do just for like time on feet, because it's hard when you're be on your feet a lot when you're 300 pounds versus be on your feet when you're $190. It's very different stimulus on the body. But like they need some like more strongman type stuff, body control, some like kind of stuff you see now with like guys like Scott Leach, so that some of the pummel grappling stuff is great. Like even like literally even just like holding bear crawl positions, like watch, like if you do bear crawls like in like a warm up, like actual slow controlled. So like watch your D tackle do it versus your corner do it. And then one is shaking and dripping in sweat, and the corner's like, "Oh, this is easy."
Right.
Right. I think that's some of the stuff, like the carries, even like fireman carries, stuff like that. That kind of like conditioning is more towards what O line, D linemen have to do day in, day out. In indie practice games, because you have to learn to control your own body and then control another person's body. So it kind of looks a little bit like a elementary like wrestling practice in some ways for some of their conditioning. Like that's okay. Like they should do some of that stuff because it's miserable when you're 310 pounds.
Right. Yeah. And to me, that's the thing is like, and again, I think the problem with a lot of lower level coaches, what they're going to listen from that is like, oh, okay, I just need to get all my offensive linemen to wrestle. Okay. And then that's not necessarily the case. Like it's the grappling, it's moving bodies. It's like kind of that hand fighting or just working with it. Because the other default off of that is like, oh, well, we'll just have the linemen lift more.
Yeah.
And then, so let's say we have an hour that we're going to work out. We're going to put the DBs and the skill guys. We're going to put the skill guys in the weight room for, a 30-minute workout. And then we're going to go outside and run for 30 minutes. Right. Okay. Like sprint based, whatever. But then the linemen are like, well, we'll bring you out for the conditioning part. Right. whatever the conditioning element is, you guys go in there and move weight for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll bring you out for the last 15 for whatever the hell we're going to do for conditioning, gassers or whatever. And so then like, to me, I've always felt like when I was looking at this as well, it's like, I don't need my left tackle sprinting 40 yards.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I always tried to limit the distance exposure, but you still need to have that element. I mean, talk to me about kind of like if you're sitting here as a high school coach? Basically, like you're in the same situation. You have the same knowledge I do. Like I am not a strength and conditioning coach. I'm a DB coach. I did some sprint, I coach track, and that's my background, right?
Yeah.
How can you approach strength and conditioning to create a quality program without necessarily needing to go get a certification? Because, like, let's be honest, like 90% of these coaches are not going to have to be able to go get a certification or have a strength. Like, I could call you, or I could call our
Yeah.
friend Jordan Gush and be like, "Hey, how are you developing like this?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's not really reasonable. So, like, how can coaches without a strength and conditioning background like really build a quality program?
Yeah, I think a big one is like keep it super simple from like a fundamental standpoint. Like teach guys how to push, how to pull, how to do a proper pull up, how to do a squat, how to like hinge, like an RDL deadlift type of movement. Doesn't have to be a crazy lot of reps, and you can keep it as full body, like keep it 2 3 times a week, and then like teach them how to run. I would sprint twice a week. Have 2 other conditioning days that one's more running based and one's like purely it's even like your skill guys and your combo guys, like your mid to your mids, like your bit skill. Like even they need some of that body control type of work because let's call it what it is. Like there are a lot of kids who don't play outside a
Right.
ton anymore either. Like so teaching them how to like actually crawl, skip, like carry, do like wheelbarrow, like walking and stuff like that. Even that's like super beneficial for them, especially like early on, like early in the summer, if like a team does like summer conditioning stuff, or in the winter when you have some guys who aren't doing track or baseball or other sports in the winter, like doing those things like early on just to get that base, and then as you get closer to summer camp. Then you add in another running day. We're like, hey, we're going to sprint twice a week, and we're going to run twice and maybe our bid you're gonna run once, but then you're gonna do more. There's still some more. It's like more grapple, body control work with that.
Yeah, I
And keep
think
the lifting super simple. Like lifting doesn't have
yeah,
to be crazy. Like you don't need a kid doesn't need to squat 500 pounds because most of the time, like I can speak to probably most strength conditioning coaches. When a kid, if we don't not really care what the kid maxed out in high school, because like we're gonna teach you how to bench, squat, clean, deadlift, how like we do it, how we want to see. Like, oh, coach, I benched 365 in high school. Yeah, that's fucking cool, dude. Like, you're not doing
right.
that here. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm happy you 3-person bench that. Like,
Yeah. And I think too, like if there is one argument for mat drills, it would be learning how to fall,
yeah,
right? And like rolling out. Like, cause
yeah,
I think like that, so that's how I always mentally was like, well, they're just learning how to fall. Okay. I'm gonna
yeah,
get that's how I'm gonna mentally get through this,
yeah. Learn,
watching these
learn,
kids flop
learn
around.
how to, yeah, learn how to tumble.
Right. Because I think that's a good thing. And I think people like, I think if you stick with like a core group, I always go back to again, because like I said at the beginning, like I grew up in the whole Husker power phase, which I'm sure
Yeah,
like all strength and conditioning guys know. But like if you really go back to it, like it's actually still not bad. Right. Like,
no,
cause it's all you have like 5 core workouts. It's all movement based. I think the most exotic thing in there's like a clean, right?
yeah,
So you're cleaning, you're moving, you get your hip hinge and stuff like that's technical and you have to take
yeah,
time. And that's where really you should be using your junior high staffs to really teach those kids with brooms and all that stuff to really
yeah,
get that. But I think to me, like you can build it, you can be more simple. And that's where I think you mentioned it earlier is like these coaches want activity all the time. Right. Whereas, and so I think what is sacrificed in that is one, the simplicity or like, just like, hey, you don't have to do a lot. You just have to do the basics and
yeah,
just get them stronger. We don't have to do a bunch of, where we're, like you said, maxing out at 500 and it's really a
yeah,
quarter squat. Right.
yeah,
Like and you're really doing more harm than good with that. And then on top of that, too, like the conditioning stuff, like you mentioned, is like, look, man, a body control, sprint based one day, more of a conditioning tempo based the next day. You don't have to think of it. And that leads me to my next question because, like, okay, now we kind of have the basics of what it means to have a simple program. But then how are you? Just kind of walk me through and you don't have to get granular really
yeah,
because I always used to use it like school is actually really really easy to schedule. Like if I'm a high school coach, I just use like either you're on a 6 week or a 9 week
yeah,
break. And so, like, talk to me, and you usually get a break each one of those. So, talk to me too, like, how would you go about structuring a year-long program? Let's say, let's start in January after Christmas break, and then we work all the way through to our last game. Like, what's kind of like the easy button or an easy way of structuring that?
Yeah, so I would start off with like that January time. Keep that same structure of maybe just like lift 3 times a week, teach them basic movements. Every lift you have a push, a pull, or multiple pulls, a hinge, a squat. So always kind of getting that motor pattern. Doesn't have to always be heavy. Doesn't be a ton of reps all the time. But just really getting those motor patterns in, and then have the other days where you are true conditioning like tempo run day, introduction on something like that. Have an intro change of direction day where teaching kids how to like shuffle or crossover step, back pedal. So regardless of position, just those basic movement patterns just help from a general athleticism standpoint. Have a sprint day in there in the week, and then have also that kind of body control day. You can kind of roll that kind of model through. You take that really into spring and roll out through January. But a big thing would be knowing each month I would have a different emphasis of those qualities. So like every month, everything can't be important all the time because
Right.
if everything's important, then nothing's important.
100%.
So like
Yes.
so if in that January time, like hey, our general like fitness is the most important. So we're gonna hammer our tempo runs and our body control like on the field, grapple stuff day because it's gonna be hard. It's gonna give us some general shape, and then when we get to February, okay, now we want to work. Maybe now our change direction stuff's the most important stuff. So now that ramps up, but then you pull back on the other things on the field. And that's where you start to maybe you can add in elements of footballs as well because you're getting ready for spring ball soon. So maybe they'll change direction stuff and go from your very basic kind of drills into now it looks like football. Now it just looks like indie. Like
Right.
guys are doing, and you can have various stations of that, have it spread out offense, defense, at various positions, and then after that you go into March. Hey, now like sprinting is our biggest focus. So now we're gonna hammer our sprinting technique. Where we're gonna run with sleds and chains or prowls, whatever you have. We're gonna do some top end speed work. But then the same thing, the other things that we're doing are gonna come down a little bit, which is okay. You won't lose those qualities, so you'll keep them all year. And then you kind of wave that. And as you get into the summer, you then take that summertime. Okay, now we have to get ready to actually play football here in the fall and get ready for camp. So now we're going to ramp up some of the running a little bit. Maybe the sprinting just goes to 1 time a week. Though that's okay. Like they're high school kids. Like this is going to get faster. And your lifting will stay pretty much the same of that 2-3 times a week, a full body like model. And then as the running comes up for June, July, you pull back the running from the bigs, let the bigs do more body control stuff, but it's still conditioning based. It's not super intense, but it's just to get them moving how like they're gonna have to be able to fight another kid in the 3-yard box every single play. And then that should really just carry into the season, into camp. Then once you get in the season, hey man, you're gonna lift twice a week just so like we're moving around, it's a little flush. Not worry about the conditioning aspect because you let practice kind of take care of that. And even the sprinting speed side, like I'm a big fan of like letting practice kind of take care of that. Like have one day of practice where you have bigger spaces you can work in so guys can open up and actually sprint. Have another day of practice with more short yardage, and that's where guys get a lot of change of direction, acceleration, decelerations in. Have another day where you take them off, which is a walkthrough, keep it super chill, keep the kids in tennis shoes, honestly, don't even have them put cleats on. And then have another day like your primer day, like a Thursday, before you play on a Friday, or for some high school you play on a Saturday too, depending on the state you're in. And then have that primer day literally be an hour 10 to tops. You can have cleats on, you can no helmet, just get in, get out, and then you go out and play the game. You kind of rinse and repeat that kind of flow all season, and then hopefully you come out on top at the end of the year.
Right.
Then you ideally, if you play late in years like in Texas, like I don't want to say when I was in high school, I think the playoffs was like 6 weeks. So
it is 6 round. Yeah, we play 16. If you're in the state championship, you play 16 games here in the state.
So you just take that and you're like, okay, man, like when we get back in January, we're gonna keep it even lighter because we played basically till December.
Yeah, and I think that's I love the way that you said, like, just pick something each month that needs to be focused. I like to, yeah, I think probably like in January, February, you need to learn like the technical aspects of change of direction. But as you start getting into like spring and then summer, I think a lot of coaches forget, like the state of Texas just passed a couple of years ago where like you could start doing football drills, right? So if you're doing football drills and you're doing them good, like you're doing good, correct football drills, you don't need to be hammering change of direction.
No.
That mechanic should have been over in January, February. Like I one time we were having a lot of problems with like our transition out of our break. As DBs. We were getting there, but like we weren't like winning the ball in the air, right? So like I kind of asked everybody like, hey, what are your strength, like all my college buddies, like what are my strength and conditioning guys, what are they doing for that? Well, it's like, look, you should be working the mechanics in January, February, and March, and by the time that you get into spring, it's the cat's out of the bag. Like if they can't break by then,
yeah, it's too late.
Right, it's too late. And not only that, but like the mechanics of it, like if they can't do that, then they're not, you're going to be overworking it then instead of getting into that. I think that to me is really good. Now let's wrap it up with like this last question, because I think that this is, in this day and age of analytics, everything is numbers driven. Yeah. What are just some easy things, if I'm a high school coach and I'm just like, look, what are a couple of data points I can use that are accessible to me to then be able to not only structure like what we're doing in strength and conditioning, but also how that relates back to practice, which that second part I think is probably the most important.
Yeah. I'll say a big one always was like, I'm lucky, like early in my career, I went to places we didn't have a lot of technology, so they force you a ton to be creative. Is just like managing time, like overall time on feet, getting an understanding of that, and then look at a deeper level of like, okay, what's our work to rest ratio of plays in the game, like snap to snap, what's it look like, what's it like across the quarter, and it's like, okay, how do we work backwards from that? If we know we play 60 plays, like in a game on average, cool. I mean, from a conditioning side, we can be ready for that. Doesn't mean you run 60 tempos or anything like that.
Right.
But it's like, okay, what's our worth the rest roughly that? Oh, it's 1 to 4. And so, hey, let's work the high end of that to where we're working. We're going to eventually build to 1 to 2. So when we get to 1 to 4, it's much easier. But then let's keep it intense as well, though. So matching that level of intensity. So I'll say work the rest ratio. Your time on feet is a big one. I don't think you necessarily have to be so as worried about total yardage. Like, I mean, if you can afford like a solid GPS coming, like a player data or something like that, like that's great. But like, you don't have to be married to that. If you can manage time and work the rest ratios, like that density aspect, those two things that take you like very, very far, and how you like structure your training and also structure your practices. So you know, like, hey, if we have a 2-hour practice on Tuesday or like Monday, we can't have another 2-hour practice on the following day. We need to pull that back by 20, 30%. It's not what guys are recovering. And then let's have another lower, maybe pull even that number back down about 50% until we know the game's going to be at 110% of what our practice time is.
Right.
And so that like working like that and like waving that kind of intensity is like super valuable and like super easy like to do, because it's just easy to look at. Like, okay, how long was this drill? This drill lasted 3 seconds to work. It's 30-second rest because we have 9 kids in the line. Okay, maybe let's spread it up, make it 3 groups, so we get higher work, but then there's less rest going on, and vice versa if you went the other way.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Again, I go back to, I think coaches just want activity all the time. I think that there is a time and a place for having, maybe just, if you have, like you mentioned, let's say we have a group of 10, like I'm a DB coach and I have a group of 10. There's a time and a place to just have 2 lines going and like it be getting that rest. Then there's other times where it's like, hey, let's space this out. Let's get into 4 groups of 4. And now I've got 3 groups with the last group being 2. Right. So I think that's the other thing too, is like the variability. The practice thing to me has always been one of those things. Like, I feel like offensive guys are much more in tune to this, where they're like, we don't need to practice for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Whereas like defensive coaches are like, no, we got to get in this like 3-hour monster practice. And I'm like, bro, after about an hour and 45 minutes, like these kids are checked out. Like, so you're
Yeah.
basically the last half of your practice, nobody's getting anything out of it because they're already checked out. And that to me, I think is the biggest thing, like you said, is like, it's okay as a high school to take off, and if you had a 2 hour practice on Monday, which I think that's the typical length, probably 2.5 on a Monday. If that's what you're doing on a Monday, you need to peel it back on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't need to have another marathon practice on the next day because you're not giving them recovery. I think that is one of the unique things of like where if you do have an understanding of like sprint based, right? Like you have to get that total recovery. I think guys that do that have a better understanding. They're limiting their practices a little bit more than some of these older, like, but I mean, what is the perfect, like, you keep saying like 22 periods or 24 periods. So it's basically like a 2 hour practice. Like, what have you found in your studies? Like, over 2 hours, is that a hindrance or am I wrong?
I don't think it's a hindrance if you're prepared for it. It's less about what occurs that day and more about what occurs the days after.
Gotcha.
So it's like, man, if you have like, so sweet, we had a 22, 23 period practice on a Monday. So that means we can't repeat that same thing the following day and day after that and day after that. Because by the time we get to game day, we're gonna be absolutely cooked.
Right. Yeah.
Like guys are gonna be blown out mentally, physically. And so I think that kind of the biggest piece of like always just like this the quote I got from one of my mentors like here when I'm flat was like, hey man, it's like once you burn the steak, you can't go back and fix it. Like it's already done. So once you overcooked it, like
Right.
that's just what it's gonna be at this point.
Yeah, and I think too, there's such an emphasis on like having a hard practice on a Monday, just because it's like, oh, well, the kids have been off on Sunday, right? So we need to go hard. We got all this stuff that we got to get into, and then you forget as you go through the week of like, okay, well, we went hard on Monday, maybe even, and I think even mentally, you mentioned it too, like. I obviously we're sitting here talking about the physical aspect, but if I'm going to put in a bunch of stuff and we're going to run a bunch of stuff on Monday, it's also a really hard practice. Yeah, I probably cooked a steak, right? Like I just mentally overloaded them, and then physically overloaded them. It's like I almost think like if you really want to have a long practice, you should do it on a Tuesday. Like it should be like quick, get through. If you're going to have especially if you're going to one of those teams that likes to do a lot of things, you're going to have a lot of checks. You're going to get into a lot of mental gymnastics on a Monday. Then maybe Tuesday, when it's a little simpler and you've got everything in, you go a little bit. You could go longer, but then on Monday, let's shorten it up. Let's really be teacher focused and let's get them in and out. Instead of winding that up and then kind of like, hey, 2 hour practice, 2 hour practice, 2 hour practice. Oh, hey, by the way, we're off on, it's a glorified, walkthrough on Thursday. And then, oh, by the way, we got a game on Friday.
Yeah, 100%. Because you can't always like your foot can't be 100% on the pedal for all qualities. Either it's long, either it's intense, or either it's super mentally stressful. And it's like if you burn all those candles on Monday, it's like, man, good luck on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's like good luck Wednesday.
Right. And too, like I was blessed. Kaz Kazadi was at Baylor when I was at Baylor in 11, 12, 13. And so like just seeing that within the structure of like, and I really think a lot of this stuff comes from that of like, especially like out of Oregon too, with Chip Kelly, when people are like, okay, well, if we're going to be sprinting all the time, how does that then affect us on the week? Chip Kelly's the one that kind of did that, sweat Wednesdays, but then in a little higher intensity practice on the day before a game, which got real popular for a while. And I always thought like with Bryles, it was always like, look, we're going to keep everything under 2 hours, but we're going to keep it intense. And then obviously as we go through the week, we're going to taper it down. Like I think our Thursday practices were like an hour and a half. Right. And then you do your typical walkthrough. The kids are going to work out, have some sort of a jog around or whatever on that day before a game. But then, that Wednesday practice or that Thursday practice was going to be more or less like only an hour and a half. I rember him over there. We're trying to do special teams. He's over there with the clock. Like I'm like, man, I'm just a GA, dude. Don't kill me, dude. Don't kill me. He's like, why are we doing kickoffs? And these kids are sprinting like 40 yards on a kickoff. He's like, well, because we do have to kick the ball at some point because you're going to score a million points. So we do have to actually work this special teams. But
yeah.
I think there
you just say like, coach, this is about my pay grade decision, coach.
Yeah. I was like, don't fire me. I'm just a GA, but I'll go tell the guy in charge so that, but he'll scream at me and I'll take that L for you, you know? But Terrence, thanks for stopping by. I've always wanted to do something like this because I'm very curious about this aspect of it. Obviously I don't coach anymore, but I think this can be very helpful. Like just to have a conversation around the basics. Like we don't need to get in the nitty gritty. There's a million programs that you can buy. But just thank you for coming in and talking about kind of where we are at the upper levels with strength and conditioning, at least at the academic level, in terms of like you are studying this and looking at the data. But if there's any way that people can find you, or you have anything that maybe could help out, just kind of go ahead and plug that.
Yeah. So my social media is my Instagram is T Kennel, like Phys Prep, just literally first initial and then my last name, and Phys Prep. And then my Twitter is just TK Phys Prep. On there is a link to have like kind of put like essentially like a PowerPoint of me just kind of talking over like, hey, this is kind of things I would suggest in like a high school like strength support. It's like a whole year kind of annual. It's pretty broad, like 1,000-foot view. Kind of deal, and then with that, like my emails in there, social media. Anybody has any questions, like I'll try to be pretty open to like talk about whatever. So feel free to like message me like that.
Yeah, and again, thanks again for joining me and talking about this. I really appreciate it, dude. And too, like I think this is an area that if people will just pay attention and simplify, is a way that they can amplify. It's kind of like addition by subtraction. Yeah, they can amplify their programs at the high school level.
Yeah, 100%. Don't let the social media FOMO kind of get to you. It's like you keep it very, very simple and do very great things while keeping programs simple.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, bro, I appreciate you.
Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. To stay up to date with MatchQuarters and the Let's Talk Ball podcast, subscribe at MatchQuarters.com. You can always follow me on X at _coach_A and on Blue Sky, IG, TikTok, and YouTube at MatchQuarters. And let's keep talking ball.